Today we're discussing behaving appropriately at Christmas parties. Welcome to Working On It, the podcast that helps you navigate the complexities of the modern workplace. I'm Lauren Spearman, brand consultant and advocate for care and transparency in the workplace.
And I'm Molly Johnson-Jones, CEO and co-founder of Flexer. Lauren and I are here to provide you with practical advice, insightful discussion, and expert guidance on how to thrive in your career.
In this episode, we're diving into some festive fun that can have serious implications. How to behave at Christmas parties. We'll explore why it's important to maintain a level of professionalism, common pitfalls to avoid, and how to enjoy yourself while keeping your reputation intact.
We'll also discuss the impact of Christmas party behaviour on your career, relationships with your colleagues, and the overall company culture. Plus, we'll share some strategies for making the most of these events without any regrets in the morning.
So, Molly, Christmas parties, the time is coming. We're all gearing up for how we're going to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Why is it important that we need to behave appropriately? This feels like a very me question to ask.
Why do we need to behave well?
Why do we need to behave?
Well, it's still a work event at the end of the day. And I think what people don't really realise or remember when you're in the moment is that office parties, they're not just friendly social engagements like a Christmas party with friends. Like in most booze-laden party situations, people aren't judging each other. Like they're just having a chat and they're enjoying themselves. But at work parties, whether it's conscious or subconscious, people are assessing your behaviour and your interactions, and they are watching. And so whether it's intentional or not, it does definitely happen, and it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, there's a stat that found that in 2023, 27% of employees witnessed inappropriate behaviour at office parties.
I'm surprised it's not more.
I know. I was like,
I don't think
that's a boring party.
I feel like most Christmas parties have something at least mildly inappropriate happen.
Yeah, inappropriate is scalable, right? Is it like not, you wouldn't necessarily see it at a Christmas party, or inappropriate in any party situation? Maybe that's what we're thinking.
But also, you say obviously we're going into holiday season. Did you know that only 76% of companies in the UK are planning on having a Christmas party?
That feels low.
Yeah. 24% of companies are not.
I wonder what the 24% are doing. I mean, I've definitely had experiences where we have our Christmas party in January.
That is a pet hate of mine. It's just to save money. And I literally was going to tell a story about that. I remember being absolutely fuming because I think Christmas parties send a signal, right, about the company culture. Yeah. So companies need to be careful about what their Christmas parties signify. I mean, like to the January point, I worked for a company that recorded like record sales that year, and everyone was really, really excited about the Christmas party because it was like a black tie, like sit down ball thing. And then they delayed it to January to save money. And in a year where they'd performed incredibly, that sent a signal of like, okay, well, we don't really value you. Just the same as there can be that on the flip side of like, if a company has made loads of redundancies, cut loads of roles, and then a really lavish Christmas party is thrown, then it can feel a bit tone deaf as well.
I think so. I also feel like Christmas is the time of year where you're in party mode. I think your mindset is very different in January to where it is in December, and you almost need that date to look forward to go, that's when I'm going to let my hair down with my colleagues.
And it's fun. Yeah, and people do mostly genuinely enjoy it, although I'm sure not everybody does enjoy Christmas parties.
No, true, and I'm sure we'll come on to that later. The reason we're talking about what's appropriate behaviour at a Christmas party is because there are glaringly obviously things, occasionally that do go a little bit wry. I imagine that is definitely when booze is involved, and then, unwanted advances and, the colleague that tries it on, or you try it on with a colleague.
What's your worst Christmas party story?
You
can be involved, or you could have seen it.
I mean, we've all had a few Christmas snogs. That's fine.
Yeah, of course.
But nothing that's like, I have it not with anyone inappropriate or not, not been seen.
Yeah.
But just, might have a little secret snog in the corner. Especially in my 20s, not so much now. One of my best Christmas stories was it was a January party. So I worked for a French company, headquarters in Paris. So all the European markets came together in head office in January for a party. It was fancy dress, and I decided, this will date it. It was when Miley Cyrus was in the press a lot. So she got on stage with Robin Thicke in a leotard, and the pointy finger. So I decided to go as her.
You went as Miley Cyrus.
So I went to a Christmas party in a leotard.
Didn't you watch Bridget Jones and learn from it?
Nope. I didn't even have nude leggings on. I just went in a you know, one of the ones with poppers. I went in a popper leotard.
Why?
Because I found a grey leotard that made me look like Miley Cyrus. I put my hair in space buns, had a giant finger. So we were all...
You wore no tights?
No tights.
We've already talked about bottomless antics. Like,
so we were gearing up to it. Everyone's like, what are they going to wear at the Christmas party?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to this, I'm going to this. And I was like, I'm going to go to Miley Cyrus. And I'm like, yeah, brilliant. And then it got to, I was in the hotel room with my colleague that I was sharing a room with. And she was like, oh, fuck, I didn't realise you were being serious. So I turned up at the party in a Mac.
Yeah.
And like my colleagues...
Like a stripper?
Yep. It was like the most embarrassing but also quite sexy feeling. And I turned up at the party and my French colleagues were like, oh my God, get off. Throughout the evening, I was just like, I am walking around in a leotard.
I bet people still talk about you to this day.
Yeah, and it's like, it comes up every now and then on Facebook memories. And I'm like, hi, where did I look kind of hot. So that was I feel like that's fine. There's nothing bad about that. It's just a bit of fun.
Is it?
Have you ever turned up at a party,
I don't know,
Nicholas?
if we're talking about appropriate behaviour at Christmas parties, I think wearing bottoms to them is like number one. As somebody wearing a leotard now, I would not wear it without trousers.
What about you? You must have some stories.
You're right. I think that there becomes like a different kind of behaviour that is acceptable at Christmas parties. And sometimes it is like harmless fun that would be seen as a bit out of hand in other scenarios. But I think there is also sometimes a level of it getting a bit out of hand. And I'm sure people that don't drink feel it. But I remember being in a situation, because I've never taken drugs and I don't, where we ended up at like an after party and the guy, very senior, decided that he was going to ring up, the St Pancras Renaissance Hotel and book out their penthouse suite for the after party.
Oh.
So about 30 of us, nearly all of us below about the age of 35, end up in the penthouse at the Renaissance Hotel in St Pancras. Great fun.
Yeah.
They gave us like our own barman making cocktails. It was really, really fun. And but it just suddenly really, really escalated. All of a sudden it was a bit Wolf of Wall Street, like drugs everywhere. Some people taking their clothes off. Like it was just,
why does everyone want to get naked when they're
I don't
drunk?
know. It's really odd. And everyone, like, you'd be going to the loo and you'd just be surrounded by other people. It was just, there was like no privacy and it was completely out of hand. And then everybody left and went home and it was just never spoken about again, ever.
How was your weekend? Did you have a good one?
But I remember feeling quite uncomfortable in that situation because I was like, there are no boundaries here.
Yeah.
And for me, I felt very pressured to do drugs until I'd said like no to everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, again, that's probably the same with drinking for some people as well. But once I'd established those boundaries and I felt a little bit more comfortable, but it really did feel like it had gone beyond work and to what you would be out like with people that you didn't know professionally.
But did you feel like at any point you wanted to raise that internally that had happened, or did you feel like it was out of work time so you could?
It felt like it was out of work time and I had fun. Like I did have fun. There was nothing that like really concerned me. It was just so not work appropriate. But it felt like one thing that I think made me feel comfortable is there was nobody else that was uncomfortable with what was going on. It was sort of like the line had been crossed and now this was no longer a work party. This was a bunch of people that happened to work together at a completely different party, and everybody else had petered off after what was at the actual Christmas party. And I actually think that's a really good thing for people that are organising Christmas parties to do, is to have a sort of like change of venue or like circuit break so that people don't feel like they have to go around and say goodbye to everybody and feel awkward leaving, but it's just like you can disappear and then you've either chosen to carry on or you haven't, and there's no pressure to continue. And we actually do that at our Christmas party, and we say to everybody, like, absolutely feel free to leave after this, we're going to change venues. And that's the point at which some people will peel off, and I do think that's quite important to have that.
What are you planning on doing this year at the Christmas party? How?
So we've got a 3-part Christmas party. We're starting off at, have you ever done High Jingo Bingo?
No, but oh, that sounds fun already.
It is chaos, complete chaos. We went back in April and it was like a Thursday in April, so it was half empty.
Oh, brilliant.
It's bingo, but kind of like Squid Game bingo. So you've got these people on stage like dressed up like sort of Squid Game-esque, like very like Korean tech, loads of colours everywhere, vibes, really chaos. And it's bingo. And you have to go up on the stage and do stuff, and then you win a prize. If you like bet on a box, then you win a prize. But you kind of have to perform in front of people. And our group of 20, there's probably about 200 people in the room. Our group of 20 won 3 out of the 6 prizes. So it was just pure chaos, like all of us screaming at each other. But we're doing that again for Christmas because everyone enjoyed it so much.
So some people will hear that and go, that is absolutely my worst nightmare. But I guess you're organising that because you know as a team collectively, everyone's up for it, right?
Also, there were people that didn't want to go up, but there were people that did.
Yeah.
So you just hand your card over. Yeah. Like I was dreading going up. It was so funny. I had Tim, our other co-founder, next to me, and he was watching me like a hawk. He was like, cross your numbers off. And I was like, if I have to go up there, I will actually cry. Like, I can't. The idea of having to like dance on demand or anything like that is mortifying for me. Absolutely mortifying. But everybody knew in that situation, like if you didn't want to go up, you just hand it to somebody else. Like there was no big peer pressure. And then we're going for a nice dinner, and then we're going on to karaoke for people that want to do it.
Oh, I love a bit of karaoke.
Yeah, we've got mixed. It's 50-50, but again, no one is forced to do karaoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your song of choice?
So Morris and I do I'm Too Sexy by Right Said Fred. Nice. And I will do Shaggy, It Wasn't Me by myself.
Oh, nice. Good choice.
What's your karaoke song of choice?
Oh, I love a bit of Adele. So
can you sing?
No, I can't sing for shit. No, I've had 2 jobs where we had like a monthly karaoke. We just loved it.
Yeah. Monthly.
Once when I was up in Manchester, it was like payday. We'd go to Lucky Voice, and then we'd just end up like staying out, whatever. And then once another business down in London, we just loved little karaoke. But when I was down in London, my colleagues loved making me sing Adele because I cannot sing for shit. Or Spice Girls, Destiny's Child, something like that.
It's almost funnier when someone can't sing at all.
Yeah, I did. I actually went on a third date. This is like last year or so. On a third date, I went karaoke with the person I was dating's work colleagues.
Some of the experiences that you have horrify me.
Yeah, I feel like I could write a book about this. But yeah, that's a new experience. Joining someone else's
payday
night
karaoke.
Yeah. But I guess there are some people that will dread a Christmas party because it may not be an activity that they necessarily want to do or would be a first choice, or there's no denying that booze will play a part in some Christmas parties, right? And we're seeing the rise of less people drinking, especially so heavily.
And about 42% of companies are apparently making efforts to curb alcohol consumption this year by either doing like more non-alcoholic options or having activities that aren't like really, really tied towards just drinking. And I do think that's important because people do get really carried away if the only activity is drinking, and you drink so quickly. Like I'm sure we've all been at like weddings or formal events where you've just got a champagne glass and it's just being filled up and filled up.
But I agree. You don't want that fear the next morning of have I done something wrong, and booze will often inevitably play a part in that.
But I do think it's really important that we don't stigmatise drinking either, because as we rightfully move towards offering more alcohol-free options, making sure that people don't feel like they have to drink and not asking questions if someone isn't drinking, I do think it's important that we don't make people uncomfortable for enjoying a drink as well.
Yes, yeah, because I think just because you like a drink doesn't mean you can't handle it.
Or that you have a problem with alcohol, or that you're going to go and act inappropriately, or that something's going to happen.
And often it is, a Christmas party is to let your hair down slightly and spend time with your colleagues. I remember one of my roles, the Christmas party, everyone finished at 3:00, and then we had drinks trolley, and we all got ready together, and it was just such a lovely experience. And it's so that real bonding, and it's the moment that you all look forward to, and it's the chance to speak to someone that you see in the office but you don't see that often. I think it can be such a lovely bonding experience.
And I think it depends on cultures as well. Like I'm sure that I've definitely worked at companies where I didn't particularly enjoy the Christmas party because I didn't love the colleagues that I was working with or the team or whatever situation. And so I think it really does vary. Like it can be such a wonderful experience, but also there can be a sense of anxiety or dread around it if you don't have a great company culture, or if your Christmas party is just like going and having a pint in a pub and some shit turkey. Like that's also not a particularly good experience. So I do think it's up to companies, particularly as we move towards more distributed working, where like those in-person connections and that in-person time becomes really important, and building bonds between people happens less frequently. think the Christmas party is a perfect opportunity to do that because it's fun. Most people sort of expect it. And if you put thought into it, it can be a really wonderful bonding experience. But if it's just like, oh, we're going to the pub and having a Christmas dinner with a bunch of people that you don't really like, and people aren't making an effort to overcome awkwardness by, like, I don't know, a game or creating activities, then I don't think those kind of events work very well.
Yeah, as you were talking then, I just had this flashback to in lockdown having a remote Christmas party. And
oh my God, what, like on Zoom? No.
So it was.
What did you have to do?
So in advance, we got to tick like a little present that would get sent out. So I chose obviously wine and cheese, but you could have had soft drinks and sweets or I don't know, whatever it was.
That's quite nice.
And I was in my flat, and the idea is you might put a little outfit on, you don't have to, and you join this like virtual party. So you can go into different rooms, you can message people.
Oh, this is giving me trauma from one of our previous listener stories.
Yeah. That wasn't me, by the way. But yeah,
oh my God.
You could go into different rooms. Then there was like a drag queen who would like roast you, and like, they would like do this whole like
in the virtual room.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really funny. And then there was like karaoke. There was all sorts of stuff. We slowly kind of like pilfered off, and then I think a few of us just created our own Zoom, and I was just like, wow, I've got drunk at the Christmas party, but I'm on my sofa. It was
I'm on Zoom.
Really weird, yeah.
So do you remember all of the like Zoom quizzes that happened during lockdown? Yeah.
But I do think you touched on it earlier, the rise of the kind of Christmas party being segmented a little bit in sometimes activities. So one of the best activities I ever did, it was actually a team Christmas. So you might have a company-wide Christmas party.
Bit of a smaller one, yeah.
Team one, we did an escape room.
Oh, I've actually never done one.
Oh, absolutely, we came alive. The theme was, so I got to pick the theme because they, all do different ones. And we picked a Las Vegas stag do gone wrong.
But like, what's that film?
The stripper had gone missing. Oh, like a hangover.
Yeah.
No, the stag had gone missing. We had to find the stag. So we walked into this room, and it was like you'd walked into a Las Vegas hotel room, and like you had to do different things. So you had to like pick up a phone, and you heard the couple next door having sex, and you had to decipher like, was that the stripper or was it the stag? And we went into one room, and there were like loads of paddles, like
spanking
like,
paddles.
Yeah. Sorry, but anyone, I don't know if the mic's picking up that movement with my hand there.
Just pounding your fist.
It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, that was a team that we were really close, so we picked that.
Yeah.
But it was there, and then we went for dinner, and it was just such a nice bonding experience. And we still look back and go, do you remember this? And I think, especially for people who may not know their colleagues as well, to have that activity as an anchor, to have something to talk about.
I think that's really important.
Rather than you're just sat at dinner and you don't know anything, at least there's a shared experience that you can then talk about, which I think is why something that is activity-based is really helpful.
Yeah, whether it's just like a crazy golf or an escape room or something like that, I do think is really important, because then also you've got something to talk about later on, when you are then sitting down at dinner or
and
drinks,
it could be something like even like a quiz or something. You get put on a different team.
We do an activity and then dinner and drinks every month for our team, as like to bring everybody together from remote first, because everyone's all around. So you bring everybody down, and then we've done bingo, we've done crazy golf, we've done dumpling making, we've done pizza making, and then you go to dinner, and then you have drinks like pretty much on repeat every month, so that people can build those connections. Because as I said, I think in distributed teams, the impromptu, like, oh, should we go for a drink on a Thursday, or the Friday drinks trolley, or people going for lunch together on a random Wednesday, just doesn't really happen as much anymore. No. It feels much more like, because going into the office, even if it's hybrid, is more of an occasion and you're there to work or to do meetings, it feels like those impromptu kind of social events happen much less. So you have to consciously create them.
Yeah, and I think there is conversation around Christmas parties is sometimes like, oh, just give us some money, or or do something else, just want a present. But actually, it's the bonding that I think is the important. It's that in-person time, it's that connection.
Yeah.
And yes, I can sometimes see why that's not going to be for everyone, but I do think it's a structured way to bring people together.
Often, what I've seen anyway, is that people will say, oh, like Christmas parties often aren't like particularly introvert friendly, and they're very much for extroverts. And as somebody, probably I'd be more on the side of introvert than extrovert, I find having that activity very helpful, because you feel distracted by it, and then you've got something to go and talk about. And I think it's really, really important, because the people that are often organising the Christmas parties are more likely to be the ones that love the social occasions and are very extroverted by nature. So being conscious of people that might feel anxious in those kind of social situations, maybe are more introverted, don't drink, or maybe want to go home a bit earlier, like being very, very conscious of making sure that it's inclusive for everybody.
There's also a conversation sometimes with Christmas parties of businesses use it as like if there is a dinner, for example, it's like split all the teams up and you meet someone new. But actually, I think often that chance to let your hair down if you want to spend time with your colleagues and build those relationships even more, then use it as some kind of like speed dating event.
Oh, corporate speed dating would be horrible. So we've heard about the worst thing that you've done at a Christmas party, turn up as Miley Cyrus.
Arguably the best as well, though.
What is the worst thing that you've seen happen at a Christmas party?
I mean, I guess it's just people being incredibly drunk and like having passed out, or
being inappropriate with people.
Yeah, I mean, I've not necessarily firsthand witnessed it inappropriate. I think I'm very fortunate. I haven't seen anything inappropriate that would be reportable, but I have seen, lots of snogging or whatever. Which I think, I don't know, it just comes part and parcel, I think. I think
there's nothing wrong with that if it's consensual and it's not at like 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I kind of feel like, when in my 20s, that was fine. As soon as I got into a role where I was heading up a team, my behaviour completely changed. And not that I'm like going around snogging everyone, like getting drunk or whatever, but it's more the fact that
you become
was
a role
so
model.
scared of being seen in a different, like I knew I had to separate myself slightly. I also think actually when you get to a certain level, it's knowing when to step away and leave everyone else to kind of have fun.
Because they will feel maybe a little bit more constrained by your presence.
Yeah, I think so. My first time I headed up a team, I went a bit too extreme and I left the party at like 8 because I was like almost too scared.
You were that worried about it?
Yeah, I had only been in the job 6 months. I was a bit worried, so I went a bit too extreme and left a bit too early. But yeah, I would always make sure I'm not the last to leave anymore. Whereas previously, I think I would have been like, I remember one Christmas party, we started at 1 p.m. and I got home at 8 a.m.
Jesus.
I know.
8 a.m.
Yeah, there was a few of us. We ended up going back to the Ned Hotel, which was my favourite at the time. And then like one person had a room and we were all just like gate crashed. And I was just like, I woke up with like just feeling absolutely disgusting.
Going to bed at 8 in the morning is horrific.
Yeah, it's not smart.
I've just going back to
give me flashbacks.
Yeah, I was like going back to our ick episode. I've just realised I have a Christmas party ick.
Oh.
People that dance too early. The first people, when people are like,
they are the bravest soldiers.
not when it's like ready to dance time. When people are like second welcome drink in, and they're dancing,
or they'll kind of like try and get someone else up too early. I'm all for that. I like that. I wish I had the confidence of those people.
I'm a very judgmental person and I don't like it.
We're learning that. We learned that fast, Molly. I do think in all seriousness, we do have to be a little bit conscious that it is still a work environment. You may be with your colleagues that you're friends with, but you are still in a professional setting and you do have to be aware of your behaviour, especially if that goes a little bit too far. And there's some stats that says 30% of HR managers say that how employees behave at holiday parties is often discussed in performance reviews. That feels
I'm so surprised that's so
brutal.
High.
I know.
I guess it also has to be taken in the context of company culture, because there are some places where I'm sure it's very formal, there's a really big hierarchy, there's a dress code, like, you wouldn't be heard laughing in an office, versus other companies where it's much more casual and you're much more likely to treat some of your colleagues a bit more like friends.
Yes.
So although obviously your behaviour has to be work appropriate, what work appropriate is will really vary from company to company.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's being aware of that will make a whole heap of difference to you. And those kind of businesses where maybe senior leadership are a bit more involved and kind of you see them let their hair down a little bit.
And then that role models and signals that that's okay. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I've got a fun stat for you. Guess what percentage of festive injuries are, like festive season injuries, are party related?
Oh.
Workplace injuries.
Okay. 20%.
40.
Oh. Wow.
40% of workplace injuries around Christmas are because of the Christmas party.
Because they got up on the dance floor too early and slipped. It must be a lot of falling over on the dance floor.
Because I made it slippery.
Sabotage. Have you had an injury at work that wasn't your fault? Or maybe it was.
I don't think I've ever hurt myself at a Christmas party.
No, I've not hurt myself. I've definitely had a few where it's like I should have probably not had that final glass of Prosecco, but not. I've never had a incident.
I've probably fallen over, but not badly. Probably like tripped up the stairs or something. But
No,
I don't.
I'm trying to think of what I've witnessed. I must have been a hell of a lot of Christmas parties.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything horrific happen. No. I mean, I've gone to a couple of very boring Christmas parties as well, and I'd much rather have a dramatic one than a boring one.
I think we kind of talk about, really watching your behaviour at Christmas parties and, the detrimental impact that can have. But there is a flip side to, Christmas parties and they can have a positive impact. For example, great relationship building.
Yeah, it's great fun. And when it's the right balance of appropriate but also fun, then I do think it can have a really positive impact on team morale. It can be something that people will talk about, also something that people will look forward to the following year if it's done correctly. So I think, there's the scaremongering stats of the fact that 30% of HR managers would discuss workplace,
really
working party behaviour. But I do also think that there is a very positive impact of not being the first to leave, but also not being the last to leave. Like everything, doing it in moderation feels like the best approach.
I have an incident, this was quite a few years ago now, where I had a colleague that we had gotten really well, and then there was just some friction within the team, and we didn't fall out, but the relationship kind of felt a bit fragmented. And actually we kind of used the chance to, I guess, accidentally letting our hair down a little bit at the Christmas party, and we ended up speaking to each other and resolving it. And, it was actually a really positive
really
conversation.
Nice.
I think because we were not in the office, because it didn't feel like a confrontational space, because ultimately, we're good people and don't want to fall out with anyone at work. So I do think there are times when actually that kind of social setting is really positive, and having that time that's not to talk about work.
And we all know that you love a chat with a colleague to resolve a problem.
There's nothing that can't be resolved with a little chat.
Every episode there's another example.
It's why I get on with people, Molly.
I also think that people need to be aware of the level of gossip that can happen at Christmas parties as well.
Yes, yeah.
And if you're like sneaking off with somebody, or you arrive at a certain time with somebody, it does become a source of gossip, definitely. So just being conscious of how things appear.
But also being conscious of yourself being the gossip as well.
Yeah,
because that can be seen. Yeah, that can be seen as a negative as well if you're the one that's kind of like telling everyone or spreading it everyone.
Yeah, exactly. This is a quick reminder that you're listening to Working on It, the podcast that unpacks the trials and tribulations of today's working environment. With me, Molly Johnson-Jones,
and me, Lauren Spearman. Time for a quick ad break. Fed up with being catfished? I'm not talking about your love life. I'm talking about being catfished at work. Showing up expecting an amazing culture, great vibes, and instead finding microwave fish and micromanagers. But how can you really tell what it's like to work somewhere before you show up on day one? The Work Index is like having a friend on the inside, giving you all the info you need about a company before you accept an offer or spend hours and hours applying. There are 20,000 companies on the Work Index with info on culture, benefits, promotion, progression, and management style. Go check it out now at theindex.work.
Coming up, we're going to discuss strategies for enjoying the holiday party season responsibly. But first, let's explore a real-life scenario from a listener.
Okay, Molly, let's dive in. I recently joined a new company and their annual Christmas party is coming up. I've heard from co-workers that things can get pretty wild, and I'm a bit anxious about attending. I want to make a good impression and build relationships, but also avoid any uncomfortable situations. What advice do you have for navigating this event?
Really good question, and I'm sure a lot of people feel like this.
Yeah.
Particularly as the stories that come out of Christmas parties often are a bit mental, but that's often they happen later on.
Yes, it's very rare that at 7 p.m. someone's swinging the dick around a party.
I've personally never seen that even at midnight at a work party.
No, I haven't. What a shame.
So with that in mind, I understand why there's anxiety, but it's likely that kind of stuff will happen after people have had a lot of drinks and it's a lot later. So go into it with an open mind and use the first few hours to chat to people, build relationships. And then as soon as you feel uncomfortable, if it's a bit too mad, you can just go home.
I would also say to add that, if you are feeling a bit anxious, don't be afraid to maybe vocalise it to one or two of your colleagues that you are closer to, because they may be able to bring you in on conversations with people. Because I think sometimes it does feel a little bit networky, right? Especially if you're new in the business or it's a big business. So are there people that you can tag team with a little bit, or are there other people that they can introduce you to that you know that you'll feel, you might enjoy the conversation with a little bit. So you don't go into it going, oh my God, I'm dreading it, I'm dreading it.
Yeah, that's a really,
fast
it's like, oh.
Wow, couldn't get my words out.
Another thing that I've done a couple of times when I was new at a company and then it was straight into an event or something like a Christmas party, I'd ask a colleague to go for a drink beforehand, so then you go in together.
Yeah.
And it means then you've got somebody, that probably the first couple of conversations that you're in, you're with them.
Yeah.
So at least it feels a little bit less like you just arrive and you're standing there with a drink on your phone because you're like, oh shit, what do I do?
Yes, yeah. I also, to your point about knowing when to leave, like don't force yourself into a situation if you really don't want to. I'm a big fan of an Irish exit.
Yeah, always.
Always, just go.
They don't need to say goodbye to loads of people.
Especially
but
in my case when I'm leaving at 8 p.m.
But it does need to be late enough for you to go out unnoticed to be able to deploy that strategy. Whereas if you just got up halfway through dinner and you're like...
Yes, yeah.
Again, it's don't be the first to leave, but don't be the last.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to stay true to yourself. Like if you do find it uncomfortable, you are inevitably they're often in the evening outside of working hour, late. Like don't stay for the sake of it, just to prove that you can.
Yeah, exactly.
One part of a Christmas party or Christmas season we have not spoken about yet is Secret Santa.
I love Secret Santa. I think it's great.
Oh, very positive response.
Unlike me, isn't it?
I was absolutely blindsided then. What do you like
I do
about
enjoy
Secret
some
Santa?
things.
What do you like about Secret Santa?
I just think it's quite a nice, wholesome activity that gets everybody involved. And often it's a really good way to get people talking that otherwise wouldn't. Because obviously it's just like the likelihood is you're going to get some really random allocations. And I think that's such an important thing for companies when they're designing and organising their Christmas parties is to make sure there are enough little icebreakery scenarios of some kind.
What's the best Secret Santa gift that you have given or received?
Received, I got a little personalised jumper with my dog's face on it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was such a good one.
Do you wear that with your lycra in the office?
Yeah, I do actually. Half ick, half not. And then given, so one of the Secret Santas that we had to do at a previous company was what's the most like pointless gift
that
you can give somebody that they might want. And so I bought them a set of children's training chopsticks.
Wow. Why? Well, they're just a small pair of chopsticks.
They've got like, they're like together. They're like kind of like scissors, but they're tiny.
Have they ever used them?
They actually learned how to use chopsticks with them. So I thought that was a really, really good one because it was like maybe they won't know how to use them.
Well, you actually failed on that because that does have a point.
But it was potentially pointless if they couldn't use chopsticks.
I once, I got it for someone I managed. I made a calendar of all the like hot, muscly men that she fancied and followed on Instagram. I basically went through her following list on Instagram and picked out like
and it was all
these
hot,
like
muscly
beefcakes, and then I made a calendar of their photos.
Right.
And like,
how was that received?
I absolutely loved it. And then we had it up in the office. It was great. It's a gift for everyone. Now, looking back, like, would I do that? But I think that was a sign of like how close we were as a team.
Yeah.
That was okay. I think, would I get John from accounts a calendar of like the women he followed on Instagram?
No.
Julie XXX. No, I wouldn't.
But that's funny because it's like the appropriateness is so contextual.
Yeah, I had gone to a lot of effort in that. But then I've also, one of the, like, a great gift that I received was, I just moved house and I became obsessed with, like, plants, which someone had gone onto my Instagram to see what I was, like, must have been talking about. And they bought me a little book about houseplants, which I just thought was really...
very thoughtful.
And it was someone that I didn't know at work, and they'd obviously done a bit of research, which I thought was really sweet. Yes. Molly, we've touched on the much more jovial side of parties, and, you know, generally we hope people have lots of fun at a party. But there can be a darker side where actually there is things that maybe companies need to be aware of, or at times that you may want to share what's gone on.
Yeah.
How do you think businesses can set themselves up to manage that, or put things in place for people to feel comfortable to speak about?
I think particularly if it's large organisations, like setting clear guidelines and kind of communicating them before the event, like what the expectations are, you know, actually what the dress code is, will there be non-alcoholic options, will there be activities? But I think also making sure that people know that there is somebody to go to if anything. has potentially gone wrong and feel safe in being able to, even if it didn't happen to them, to be able to report something and say, hey, I saw this and I'm a bit concerned about it. I do think that's a really important step, whether that is, nominated HR team or somebody else within the team, from a sort of safeguarding perspective. And to your point of how your behaviour changed when you became a manager, I think making sure that obviously managers can still let their hair down and still have fun, but being aware that they also do have a responsibility to their team to make sure that everything is okay. And like, I've definitely been in situations at Christmas parties where I've been worried about somebody getting home or worried that somebody had drunk too much and given them a glass of water or called them a taxi and made sure that they've got back okay. Like, there is a responsibility for managers, and I think that companies need to communicate that to managers as well to make sure that they're on the lookout.
I do think that's a really important point about getting home. I worked for a business a few years ago where the party was near the office, but actually they put us all up in a hotel. Those that didn't want to stay in a hotel, they provided transport to get home.
That's really good. Yeah.
It was, I think everyone just felt a bit more relaxed because they didn't have to worry about how they were going to get home.
Yeah, we always let people expense taxis after those events to make sure that, no public transport, you just get home.
Yeah, it just makes such a difference, especially if you're, working out of hours or it's late, or if you are in London, if the tube, past the tube.
Yeah.
Closing hours.
I think it's also really important for people. I'm sure there are people listening going, oh shit, I really embarrassed myself at the last Christmas party. Are people going to remember it? There are also just like little fuck-ups that don't matter. It doesn't have to be career defining.
Yeah.
People can laugh about it and be like, lol, you were the one that got really drunk and cried. Like, that doesn't mean that people respect you less, and it definitely doesn't mean it's the end of your career at all. However, if you are in a situation where you're like, oh, maybe I'm about to do something that feels like it could be deemed a bit appropriate, just don't do it. If there is ever any doubt, just don't do it.
Yes. Or, if you have, and you might have said something you wouldn't necessarily say if you were, given the chance again, own it and just apologise. Or, you know me, I love a chat. It can all be resolved in a conversation.
Absolutely. And addressing it, if you are feeling a bit mortified by it, is absolutely the right thing to do.
Yes, but I think you raise a point. You don't have to be defined by your behaviour at a Christmas party, for sure. Molly, this has been a really interesting episode. This is where I hate being freelance, because I really want to go to a Christmas party now. I might join yours.
A little podcast.
Can I be your honorary guest?
Me, you and Jakob.
The main thing we're kind of taking away from that is hopefully you'll have a really fun experience at a Christmas party, but don't do anything that feels incredibly uncomfortable. Just try watch your behaviour a little bit, and more importantly, get home safe.
And remember, enjoy yourself. Don't judge people. It's just a fun time, hopefully. But also, if anything inappropriate does happen, hopefully you feel that you absolutely can report it or talk to somebody about it.
Yes. If you have any juicy Christmas stories to share, love to hear them.
Please do.
Please
Even
do
in January.
Keep us going all year through. Please reach out to us on Instagram or TikTok at workingonit.pod, or email us hello@workingonit.show.
Thank you very much for joining us at Working On It. Until next time, enjoy your Christmas party and don't behave too inappropriately.